Alrighty. Don't pigeonhole me into Pokemon, 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 please, 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 please.
Nightmare!
Context this video.
That's why I never get invited to parties anymore.
But seriously, thank you. So much awesome feedback on that last one, and 90% of y'all were making great points and respectfully disagreeing with me. It shows that you're thinking. It's amazing. Some of you also called me an asshole and questioned why I'm playing games that I hate. The answer being, nostalgia and vengeance, let's go! Y'all really want to tap my brains on Legends Arceus, huh? It's not like I have interests other than Pokemon, why not the intricacies of Final Fantasy XIV's aircraft and submersible systems? I don't have anything to say about those, but you don't know that! I have the Mega Man Star Force script. It was done when I started this. I've got the footage, I've researched it, but nah, I guess we're doing this instead. Like and sub to the Ludomancer. You'll get more content from me every 8 months, and when I inevitably form my ultimate globe-spanning VR utopia, maybe I'll let you log out.
Okay, that was from Scanners.
It'll be great. I'll run it off of every crypto bro's dead dreams and familial disappointment. The year is 2021! People have been clamoring for Gen 4 remakes for about 10 years. GameFreak are fresh out of the Sword and Shield Dexit controversy, with only minor scars and several $100 million to show for it. And nobody visibly complaining about its traditional trash-fire antagonist. The presentation begins, and the best part of this franchise is the marketing, as per usual. These people can literally just flex about how they dominate global culture, giving one of the greatest genre fiction stories ever told, less billing than the fact that they made a camera once. And it's somehow awesome. Our animatronic Poke Overlords and their library of text-to-speech programs inform us that Bandai Namco, the people who thought this was a good idea, are better at making Pokemon real than they can ever hope to be. And we got a swirl puzzle, and a reminder of the app another studio made with their property, you know. The app, the one that almost made world peace happen, and we travel back in time for them to take the nostalgia that runs through my blood like gasoline and burn me alive from within by way of Funko Pops. And we are immediately met by the revelation that this trailer has infinitely more thought put into it than the thing that they're selling. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, objectively, the least thoughtfully produced products I've ever touched because there are no designers on the credits, and it is faithful in ways that make it objectively worse than a game that came out 2 years after it, and after a dozen minutes of this masturbatory nonsense,
This is a tale from a long, long time ago, when the Sinnoh region was still only a vast wilderness.
this is 100% the best ever Pokemon Presents. Like, we got literally everything we asked for. Breath of the Wild 2, looking fresh. So, they're finally attempting to make a game that every child used to imagine while playing Pokemon. I've never seen a game trailer where the world looks so lifeless before. I'm so happy that after such a long time, Nintendo 64 games are still getting made! The Legends Arceus trailers are so critical, and I'm so happy because these people are correct. Months pass, we get the game, and Hisui decisively fails to light the world on fire like Hyrule did. A few months later, yours truly gets this thing popped onto a Switch from a family purchase, and it is more than I expected, but in the way that a kitchen fire is more than I expect when I wake up.
Smells like turkey.
This game is full of bizarre decisions, transparently corporate elements of what the kids like these days, absolutely bewildering world building with added quality of life features older than, generously, Gen 4, or more realistically older than the entire franchise. Here's how I order this. First, the game doesn't reinvent the franchise like Breath of the Wild did because these franchises are about different things. Second, the core loop has holes. Third, the plot is boring and functionally unchanged. Fourth, the world building is entirely nonsensical and wasted, aka the part where I point out that asking a single question demolishes the entire experience and I get catharsis. Finally, I vomit mulch kidneys on the floor and talk about esoteric experiential stuff for watch time until I'm out of ideas. Part 1! This didn't fix or modernize Pokemon, it just put modern things next to Pokemon. What is Pokemon about? Above anything else, I'd say the core focus is meant to be bonding with these fantastical creatures, getting to know their own unique foibles and quirks, and working around that to explore and compete. My source? The anime, the manga, so much telling in the games to cap off every half-dramatic scene, but never any showing, because the way to their heart is at best cupcakes and head pats with no deviation, At worst, your first interaction is ripping them out of their home environment, and they immediately serve your whims forever because Pokeballs brainwash them and I won't be convinced otherwise until Pokemon show any signs of an internal life beyond a dog with a treat dangling in front of it. Imagine, you catch your Excadrill reaching up with its giant metal claws to steal people food like an ill-trained puppy. You know what you're responsible for.
You'll never find the body.
Now, how does an open world, crafting, and a less inhabited setting contribute to that core focus? It can open up an interesting design space, but call me when they put anything in it. Because in Legends Arceus, these systems are completely divorced from the ways you interact with your own Pokemon, beyond sending them out for blood diamonds. What is the core focus in The Legend of Zelda? Exploration. Assembling a growing toolbox and using it to solve puzzles both artificial and organic. So how does an open world, crafting, and a less inhabited setting contribute to that core focus? Well, that much ought to be obvious. Lacking the capacity for NPCs to open arbitrary gates, all problems are effectively yours to solve by either a keen eye, a brute force climb, or if worst comes to worst,
bananas.
Open worlds facilitate non-linear design that specifically emulates the original game, and its absolute freedom to beeline it straight to Dungeon 6 and get mollywhopped by levels! How do they hug their children?
They must kiss them. Lots of kisses.
Crafting and a less inhabited world work to respectively provide and necessitate self-sufficiency, where inns aren't as common and you're often more than a 5-minute walk away from the nearest potion seller. It recaptures that same near helplessness and the same triumph of escaping that weak little elf boy you were before to challenge the beast whose influence you see everywhere, with modern technologies and design possibilities recreating the same core, consistent landmarks to lock your eyes on and go to, and that sort of freeform exploration and player-centered goal setting are consistently rewarded with at minimum better items or a set piece, and on the higher end, the tools and connections you need to bring the smackdown to that purple juju stanking up your lovely countryside. Legends Arceus don't do that. The rationale isn't, we can make Pokemon more valuable and believable creatures if we showcase them in a more living environment. Because even though well-placed Pokemon in the open world do make it impressively believable to just watch, once you catch them, you get the pleasure of seeing them sitting around doing sweet F all, and none of it lets you bond with them once they're stuck in your pasture. It's just, Breath of the Wild did thing. Minecraft did thing. Without thinking through why Minecraft did thing or why Breath of the Wild did thing. None of this revamp changes the core appeal in ways that are worth the colossal effort. It just replaces the Pokemon and wild encounters. A good thing to be sure, but $200 is too much for a bag of chips, and Monster Hunter open worlds are too expensive for them to just make the wildlife believable. Part 2. Pokemon, where the goal's made up and the beasts don't matter. Stealth? Yep, it sure is. And in a wide open plane with basic level design, minimal verticality, quick to alert targets, and a stealth strike with random results, hell yeah, boy, we're 1 for 1 on emulating the least helpful aspect of a completely unrelated game. Less mockingly, I think it actually lends a nice ambience and weight to the world when you can engage with the wildlife in ways that aren't specifically combative. Just seeing them doing their own thing in a more natural environment than the quote-unquote wild area is beautiful, especially with some of the game's lighter, more ambient soundtracks. Congratulations, GameFreak.
Huh?
You have successfully emulated an N64 game. It really makes me wish that more Pokemon were ambivalent or curious about us, following from a distance, walking right up if you stay very still. Oh my god, there are some of those. Please, go further with this, GameFreak. How adorable could that be to get that unscripted moment? This lends amazing presence to the world for me to exploit, and when you're caught out by a more hostile Pokemon like a Scyther, you tuck and roll out of its way, switch off to a Staravia, and clock him in the back of the head to get 1 free turn to approach him. Slowly. Suplex him down to half health and snap the ball onto him! Okay, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it is pretty great and speaks to some very simple, well-designed systems interacting in charming ways. To speak broadly, the looseness of the structure of an open world can be a fantastic thing for reasons like see above. But it does not gel with Pokemon's ultra-linear, flag-focused plots. There's nothing wrong with those kinds of plots, many of my favorite games are almost entirely linear, and my mother was a flag. But when the world is this empty with so few distractions, especially compared to Legends Arceus' open-world contemporaries, letting the leash off in the way that these games do after instructing you leaves you with nothing to do but beeline for the marker. It's particularly egregious immediately after the tutorial because you've been let off your leash multiple times in the same area, but after the second time there's not enough to satisfy yourself with and putz around on. You have the space-time distortions that you just need to wait for, catching Pokemon that act in one of 4 ways. Most materials are common enough that there's no point in going on a special mission, so everything that's not the plot more or less amounts to just blind wandering with nothing to find that can't be found elsewhere. But simultaneously, that means there's very little stalls in your experience just because you ran out of Pokeballs, so I guess it works out. But also, if it's impressive that I never run out of Pokeballs, that means I'm using a lot of them, right? Which means I'm catching a lot of Pokemon, right? Which means my pastures are filling up, right? So tell me, why is multi-release something I need to unlock? Why is this not available by default? The unlock requirement punishes players who spot the warning signs of disorganization and think, I better release these guys before it becomes a problem. You know, players like me, who think and engage their brain while playing games, but I guess that's not the target demographic here. If they want to make it easier for someone after they reach the point of a full pasture, Marie can just say that you're full and point you at an option you've always had. Why are they gating the tool to prevent a problem behind the problem getting out of control? There are so many rewards for catching Pokemon that are explicitly necessary to continue the game, and the creatures themselves are the least appealing part of the bargain. The game rewards you for releasing Pokemon, why make it difficult to release Pokemon? This isn't as bad as I'm making it out, it's just a deeply backwards and moronic choice. The game loop of stealthing around, getting on your mounts, picking an isolated target is fantastic, if generic, but I'm not in a position to complain about that. The only issue is that it requires regular maintenance. Please, let me auto-release duplicate Pokemon with one button, or at least sort my pastures by species, so I can get back to the fun part of the game. Baggin, buddy, you've been memed to death, and honestly, I would pity you. But you deserve it. This game lets me purchase multiple things at once in several other places. So all of this nonsense?
Entirely unnecessary.
I know you have a list of prices in there somewhere. Just set the price for the total to be the sum of the next X purchases. How do I know that they have a list? I'm a wizard. Next question. About the actual combat. Agile and strong styles are interesting. They take a minute to kick in, and it makes new Pokemon a bit of a pain to level, which isn't the biggest deal. Bonus turns are one of the most satisfying things to use and abuse in RPGs, to the point where one entire publisher stakes their life on the concept. But this system really isn't showing its full potential. Wow! Turn queues like this work really well when more than 2 characters are on the queue. You know, when there's actual information to track. In single battles with their speed and low turn counts, it can get hard to notice. Consecutive turns only appearing so far down the turn queue that you can't see a difference between Agile and normal, and only Agile Stance Bullet Punch popping off gets anything consistent. There are points where it comes up in contexts with more than 2 Pokemon in one battle, but they're so rare that I just get back to the point I glazed over in my last video where single battles are dull for single player. There's so few options compared to every other turn-based system. In Final Fantasy, you'll have a turn with your healer when everyone's at full health. But you have better situational options on your next character, so letting a turn be suboptimal isn't the end of the world. In these games, changing your options out is such a commitment that it's honestly a losing gambit to get something that most other combat systems just give you. Because more options means more choices, means more room to challenge the player. Mainline Pokemon single battles are so restrictive that I genuinely believe that the entire push against turn-based combat is found in any reaction to just Pokemon's handling of it. Atlas games, Octopath Traveler, Magic the Gathering, chess all have so many more options with such greater impact that entire books can and have been written about, particularly the latter two. Do double battles affect type coverage in a weird way because it's incredibly easy to get a super effective move when you have more moves available to you? Yes. Pokemon combat is largely defined by its minimal options and one-hit KO focus, but I don't consider that to be a good thing. Sweeps and their card game cousins FTKs are generally only fun for the winner, if that. Ladies and gentlemen, never play Yu-Gi-Oh!
It's a Sisyphean hellhole.
Double the Pokemon means double the options, means double the chances for preemptive counterplay, which means that Pokemon unlocks that most wonderful dimension of human thought.
Priorities.
Yeah, any competitive player can find more depth in these systems with dense combos, swap reads, stall strats, and figuring ways around the Kyogre meta, but also
Your math is no match for my
Swords Dance.
you idiot!
This thing annihilates the entire main game, so maybe GameFreak are at fault for offering players no incentive or way to play the game in an interesting way. Competition lets you min-max and make reads in any system. It doesn't mean it's even worth getting into for us plebs who can't tell an IV from a 401k and just want a good solo game. Forget this, I'm living in the woods! So yeah, I still want more double battles. My ideal Pokemon game deals exclusively in 4v4s with this new turn queue. Maybe some Skullgirl style scaling when fewer Pokemon are on one given team. Raid style, baby. Thank God for simultaneous turns in the Gen 9 raids. How the hell did that pass QA? The plot and the distortions will just throw you into a 1v3 with no warning, which I guess qualifies as prioritizing, but giving you more dudes to hit without an increase in your ability to hit dudes doesn't exactly strike as fun or fair, because I'm just waiting for everyone else to finish their turn and only get 2 additional options. Stop Guy doing the most damage, or stop Guy from using Hypnosis and equivalents. And with how swingy Pokemon is, this can become a problem extremely quickly. It turns out my advice last time to stop breaking up the visual and text elements of stat downs and just make them simultaneous was outdated when the video came out, but it took them 20 years too long, so I think I reserve the right to stay mad. Noble Fights! This game features several. Most of them are bad. Lilligant's alright with good telegraphs, but the rest are marred by an uncooperative camera, weird delay on the health bar, and it's mostly button mashing, waiting for the weak point to open, and it's not even testing me on the skills I've been training up to now. Maybe that's because Pokemon signals are extremely restrictive, with little way to form a challenge beyond a mathematical enema. Electrode in particular can suck me right off. There's hardly any opportunity to squeeze out a bomb without taking a hit from the homing projectile that's so barely slower than you that it's not even relevant and lasts for 20 seconds at least. Are you mad? So it lasts for 20 seconds and pops out a new one every 10. For every half second of throwing, you get 10 of creating distance from it. Why did they even choose Electrode for this? This shader looks awful on him. But that's a small part of the game. When the Galaxy team lets out their one-man trophic cascade, one of my favorite things about this game is the ability to decide which Pokemon I want to throw out so fluidly. It's almost the Elite Dangerous school of immersion, forcing you to deal with the nitty-gritty where other games would just have you enter a loading zone and dock you automatically. Using them as ranged material gatherers is a convincing use for them, even if the range is embarrassingly short. Not that I'm familiar. I think that this is a great step towards making Pokemon more meaningful, present companions instead of arbitrary animal slaves. Out of combat utility. It's why I think the current methods of HM replacement kind of fail. Using your own Pokemon for navigation was great. A move was just an annoying price to pay. Letting your Pokemon provide that utility by virtue of being able to learn the move at all is perfectly reasonable and technically feasible. These out-of-battle utilities are the first steps of many and don't affect much yet. It still needs some form of actual semi-required care or attention paid to their needs. You can let your Pokemon out to chill, but they don't do anything. They just sit there and act cute for no reason. Blink, jackass, do something! Just try and prove your autonomy! The most they do is fall asleep, and there's nothing I can do with them. Whatever ways of maintenance and investment come about, it shouldn't be persistent, like needing to fill a depleting hunger or head pats bar, because that scales incredibly poorly with multiple Pokemon, and a feed all button would just homogenize them and make it meaningless. So what I suggest we do moving forward is maybe we borrow something Digimon has been doing for a while with their Digifarms. Yes, everything starts with Digi and everything else ends in Mon because the early 2000s, when everybody stopped caring. So, have a smaller pasture to put only your favorite, most used Pokemon in, with custom crafted training gear and amenities. Make it start out really basic, maybe if you neglect them they'll disobey at higher levels, as a replacement for the weird gym badge restrictions that have honestly never made any in-game sense.
I will obey, father.
Made for a damn fine manga arc, though. If we're setting it in modern times again, maybe instead of this dumb shrinking excuse or the worst data excuse, we just say that Pokeballs create baby pocket dimensions, which somehow presents the least world-building problems out of any of these three, because these settings only work if they are openly Discworld levels of magical, and I wish GameFreak would just own that. Say that the apricorns used to make all Pokeballs are influenced by Hisuian dimensional rifts, that's all we need. Regardless, my Digifarm knockoff proposition. You enter your Pokeballs just like your Pokemon do, you decorate their little Animal Crossing houses with special goods. Maybe these training facilities will give Pokemon stationed with them bonus stab, type resistances, 1 bonus turn per battle after using dedicated status effect moves, PP recovery, daycare effects, passive status chance on all physical moves, bring back some less restrictive formats for endgame challenges like we had in Black Tower to make them useful, disable all of them for competitive so that nobody pulls an A-palm on my window, and a passive moves won't kill claws because False Swipe is an over-specialized pain in my ass. Give maybe 12 slots for these custom setups to encourage a self-selected minimal core cast of Pokemon you invest in while the plot is going on. Maybe late game upgrades and side quests will raise the basic level ceiling for uncustomized Pokemon and point the player towards experimentation in the post-game. Let the player watch their little sprite fool around with the machines in a little Tamagotchi side window and add some custom text boxes for when you throw them out. Do us feeling pumped after finishing a set. Groval's blades are dripping with venom. I'll re-emphasize that the game we're actually playing does not have these things and treats the creatures as robots once you actually own them, and that it desperately needs an item that forces a space-time distortion to occur somewhere far away on the map for the post-game and move on because ho damn! Part 3! What am I even doing here? Doop doop! All aboard for Spoiler Station. This is where I thrive and where y'all get pissed at the wizard for taking too long on the details. We open on every isekai transition. Arceus is pickpocketing our iPhone 14 and surgically grafting it into a Fisher-Price phone case, so may I ask, why is God so worried about me? Or all Pokemon being caught? This world is running along pretty damn fine aside from a handful of morons affecting no change, and I'm not special in any way among anyone else from my presumed home world. Be that modern Pokemon where I'm not afraid of them, or wherever else like a human world that knows from the games we get no details. So it's extremely shoddy and doesn't mean anything. Opening on a mysterious glow with a voice from nowhere is definitely a familiar way to open your story, but we're missing a number of core things that made that work. Mystery Dungeon Explorers had very obvious planting in the disembodied text, telling you to hang on, something's gone wrong, you're being ripped away from somebody here. It's very vague, and the sound of the storm implies you may have just been on a raft, a rational connection to where you wash up. But there's something there that gives an immediate, concrete mystery, and implies that any further questions beyond your partner's identity will be answered by them, and your secret power isn't immediately obvious in the ways it has and will impact the world. In Legends, we're given a very vague and meaningless objective that never comes up again in any meaningful way. We're openly shown Arceus to immediately kill any half-mystique or plausible deniability that the combination of yellow glow, phone design, and title could have had. And for what? To excuse the fact that we're not afraid of Pokemon, which, as we'll get into in our world-building chapter, isn't special at all, because this character isn't special. They're just not a dumbass. Pokeballs were recently invented. Cool. Shrinky business will come up again. Laventon's an idiot, were quickly recruited into their ranks as the only competent person Celine has ever met, and along the way we get a lot of death threats. Either that the wilds will kill us, or that we'll be left out to starve if we don't contribute. Yes, because delivering 20 more man-sized flying mantises and a god of nightmares is totally not more trouble than it's worth. We're inducted, they keep hard selling a soft game, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it can be hard to take seriously when they hammer it in so hard, and we know for a fact that none of it's true. Much of our progress is then gated behind Galactic Stars, a pretty funky prog metric. Encourages you to stay on top of your alleged Survey Corps duties. It seems like a real pain if you don't compulsively kidnap everything you see. Fortunately for me, I have no respect for the natural ecosystem and, tend to get carried away. Who's gonna stop me? I'm Wizard Gaming! P.S. I can kill you with my brain. We mess around, meet, do some requests for villagers, and yep, that's it for the world building chapter, and we meet Mai of the Diamond Clan. It's just some random person just felt one myth's worth of world building before seizing all relevance before the end. Yeah. Almighty Sinnoh. Oh, they actively worship this Almighty Sinnoh, and when they describe it, they're evidently describing Dialga. And when we come to meet their leader, he is brief, speaks his piece, and evidently has this idea that time is sacred baked into both his attitudes towards communication, saying time wasted is lost, and his perception of the Pearl Clan leader as incompetent for being relatively young. The Pearl Clan believes that the same Almighty Sinnoh deity that lives in the space-time rift atop Mount Coronet is the creator of space, with a worldview revolving around the vast space of Hisui as sacred. I don't want to make a joke about this, because this is fantastic! One of my criticisms going into this was that Hisui being supposedly an ancient Sinnoh seems to be nothing but an excuse to make the long wait for Gen 4 remakes more worthwhile, also an excuse to reuse character designs and defer the need for original names. I figured it would be a transparent sheet over an otherwise independent story, but this is genuinely interesting world building. For those of us in the know, it immediately raises the question of what will happen to rename the nation, presumably within this story. Nope! It creates an understandable conflict between two groups, especially when they hold different Pokemon as sacred guardians, which causes further conflict when they go feral per this Almighty Sinnoh's divine lightning. And it's all completely understandable why the Galaxy team doesn't wish to offend, why the Diamond Clan hopes for a different way of handling the Wild Cleavor than the Pearl Clan, and none of it strikes as contrived, because arguing about what your god looks like is one of the oldest drivers of conflict we have as a species. This genuinely works under scrutiny, which is something I can't say about any other GameFreak title. And immediately after we finish introducing that conflict with the pieces naturally fitting into place for a thinking reader. Whenever they run into each other, the same arguments flare up. Oh, really now? Yes, I said that spelling out the subtleties for the slow kids in the bag is important for kids stuff, but I think that if we walk in on two people fighting for reasons this deep-seated and personal, it's reasonable to assume that they do it often, especially when they're obviously familiar with each other, calling each other out for things separate from immediate circumstance. So Ray chiming in to explain it is effectively saying that these writers think you're too dumb to understand what you just saw. The key to kids' media explaining the subtleties to the audience is that it has to be actually subtle, and this is probably the least subtle interpersonal conflict I've seen in a while. It was great, partially because I didn't need it explained. So much of the Galaxy team feels irrelevant. You report to Celine immediately after reporting to the professor. They don't seem to do anything but wait for you and whine about Pokemon scary or celebrate that, yay, less scary. We handle the frenzied Cleavor by throwing its favorite food at it en masse, which is exactly what I would need after a nice doom scroll, a Facili facial. We get our congratulations, we learn about a new frenzied Pokemon with a minor twist that it's not a noble, Ray wants to train, and we learn that Pikachu beats his male wife, and we get repetitive from here. We go to a new place, some Pokemon's getting pissy, we clear one roadblock and solve the problem with a food fight in the name of peace, neutrality, and above all else, repeat. Extra characters come in, most of them are decent but unremarkable. There's one little twist in the way of every noble fight to keep it from being too obvious. It works as a structure. It's mostly padding, with scarce crumbs of information delivered at a good pace, but they don't feel like we're learning from the problems we're solving, just getting exposition randomly paced out without so much as decent escalation. At the very least, it checks out for gameplay and doesn't completely drain my energy by wasting my time for no reason. Rapid fire, little dog Simba gets off-screen character development and is then struck by lightning. Would be effective if only I'd known him for more than half an hour. Setup, please! There's these bandits because Saturn, Bertha, and Candace needed their designs recycled somewhere, and more show-don't-tell violations.
Let's go, girls.
Continues to be very invested in the plays, but doesn't actually do anything but exposit at me, to us analyzing after the fact a notably inconspicuous activity in a GameFreak title.
This phony sponsorship is brought to you by GameFreak. GameFreak, revel in ignorance.
Kamado wants to close the rift, I guess? Nothing's really changed about the situation to warrant that. You, what possibilities do you offer this plot? Angsting about missing home for our character to relate with? Angst about missing family? Modern engineering knowledge about trains to introduce some gameplay benefit? A Skytram between camps for a fun transport option? A modern Unovan perspective on deities and human Pokemon interactions? A jaded battle tactics master to strategize and lead the vanguard into a horde of nobles at the climax as I take on a feral space-time rift? Oh, you just give these linear time worshippers paradox-laden knowledge from the future about trainers good, dogfighting better. That my character could have easily said just as well if they weren't a no man's lane of the worst attributes from all three player character types, when these people are already plenty willing to use Pokemon battles to prove personal strength. They never learn. They'll never learn! And a plot hole for the road, thank you much. Melly is just generally obnoxious with no real point or comeuppance, so there's that. Why exactly does your arc phone beep here? Like, what? And what happens next, I'm of two minds about. After the last noble is force-fed his microplastics, it becomes worthwhile to highlight that everyone's been drawing wild, baseless speculations about the frenzies being a trial or whatever random thing they feel like saying about the space-time rift.
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the f*** up.
There is no information on anything that could actually be causing this or contributing to a solution, and spoiler alert, we never get anything concrete beyond this guy did it. So when Kamado catches the idiot ball and blames the player for turning the Sky Cruelty Squad, the first mind says that it's entirely baseless, and the things Kamado says and does based on this sudden shift in attitude are garbage.
There are those in our village who cannot trust a stranger like you who fell from the sky.
Kamado, have you not been paying attention? I'm yet to meet a single person who didn't suck me off for being awesome after the second noble. And Melly doesn't count, he doesn't hate me, he's just like that. This is 6 separate levels of contrived. This and the rift exploding in the first place are what's referred to as Diabolus Ex Machina, an inverse of its more discussed cousin Deus Ex Machina. Literally, devil from the machine and god from the machine. One is an antagonist or bad thing coming out of nowhere, another is a good thing or day saver coming out of nowhere. You'll never guess which is which. Ooh, I'm so mysterious. My arcane narratological whims are inscrutable. Deus Ex Machina is extremely bad form, unforeshadowed, and generally just kills tension. Diabolus Ex Machina is less so, mostly because Diabetes' marginal creates conflict and tension, and the guidelines for creating that are much looser than resolving it for complex narrative perspective reasons. But neither are good, so why are we doing this? Well, I think this is trying to emulate Mystery Dungeon again.
Spoiler time, ladies and gentlemen.
This time it's Rescue Team's fugitive scene, but like with the isekai angle, it's missing critical components. In Rescue Team, the entity driving you out was an established petty figure who wanted revenge and got it by riling up a mob and blaming natural disasters on you, using your secret to suggest you are the cause. The citizens rightly freak out because this is something wild that they're just learning about now, and once you're out, you don't have a return condition. As far as you can tell, there's no going back because nothing will change your pariah status. Notably, you don't know whether or not you are the cause of the disasters until the climax of the arc. Here, Kamado has had a very positive relationship with us, and we've actively resolved the crisis facing the region up to now. But the entire town flips against us on a dime along with him, despite the fact that they always knew these things about our character. We the players know for a fact that we're not responsible for this, because Kamado stated that the condition for our guilt was purposeful deception and betrayal instead of incidental damage from our presence. We get a hard win condition which easily telegraphs where the story will go from here, and the final scene that earns us our home back doesn't have half the oomph, both because we know for a fact that there is an out in Legends Arceus from the beginning, and in Rescue Team, we have aimless, angsty wandering through disasters we may have caused, with no plan which is perfect for the tension of the moment, only going on the thinnest of folk stories to see whether or not you are guilty. And all the same stuff incriminating me could be said of Ingo, but no! Where's his witch hunt? That's good. What? I said I ordered a plot hole. But I said I was in two minds about this. So what does the other side have to say? Oh my god, this is great! They're selling a change in the world state with a visual element that doesn't immediately beg more vague questions. It's letting us steep in it. GameFreak is finally adding some payoff and creating a reasonable climax just by not getting distracted.
We gotta get things ready for the big day.
What are we doing?
Oh no, it's the funeral. It's the funeral, sorry.
And the patterns in the sky look like the red chain. Ooh, where are we going with this? First side wins because I said so, and the second is a nostalgic fanboy living in the GameFreak storytelling cesspit and celebrating a graham cracker. It's contrived as all get out, and it's a poor emulation of a better story. But I honestly respect and am made very happy by the attempt, because by GameFreak standards, this is bold. There's an element of visual storytelling here. I'm genuinely intrigued, and honestly, I feel touched by the clan leaders coming to support. The pros of dipsticks are magical. You're flailing and stupid for 6 seconds to get however much good drama you can wring out of the results. Oh my god, there's another one! Hit the deck! Kojita prompts plenty of good self-aware exposition that I don't mind because of the questions in the air, and also throws Jade at, like the queen she is.
Mind if I play?
We get the stuff, forge the chain, and says, "We speak of a divine instrument. Did you really think it could be forged by mortal hands?" Oh, yes! This is a fantasy setting. We're acting like it. This is so beyond what I could celebrate in any other series. Celine abuses her authority to reinstate you with an awesome one-liner, and off we go to close the rift and stop Kamado from being a bigger idiot than he already is. Why aren't we showing any of him with cutaways? Because that seems very dramatic. Nothing's actually happened as a result of the sky being funky. Like, actually nothing. Nothing suggests we're in any kind of hurry here either. The intrigue of why is a present factor, but there's little concrete threat until the very end. Space and time unravel, okay, how? Why? We know nothing about this rift until the end of the whole plot, and even then, we barely get anything. How does Spy Kids 4 Time Boogalessi make a better apocalypse excuse with "we're gonna run out"? Benny is clumsy, but there is something here. He's just been such a non-entity that the reveal is less, "Oh, you're something other than what I thought," and more, "Oh, you're relevant now?" And we get a reveal. Okay, Ludo, save it for the world-building chapter. You got this. Benny threatens me with a good time. We beat up Kamado. He agrees to let us fix things. Dialga's summoned, and wait, what are you doing? Dude, stop! Where's the red chain? Damn it! Come on, you stupid bastards! You had it! The setup was fine!
Oh, we were right there, man!
Why are you trying to double dip? Why doesn't the red chain revolt resemble one different Cyrus? Why are these prophecies happening? Why is Melly still here?
I'm now lying on my back, getting showered in broken glass.
Okay. We back ourselves out of this dumb corner by remembering that Leon cared about rocks and actually mentioned something that matched the description of Origin early on. Nice. We find it in a cave 30 feet away, and Irida says she feels the universe was created in this exact spot. Cowabunga it is! Boy! It's a cave! What do you? Wow! This is phenomenal. I cannot imagine a better example of why Show Don't Tell is a rule, or Game Freak's refusal to acknowledge it, than this Pacific garbage patch of bad decisions. Game Freak, you can tell me whatever you damn well please. But if you're not going to show me something that actually deserves a response half this grandiose, your writers saying this doesn't sprinkle magic fairy dust on your 3D models to make me think that your radioactive bathroom smear is a Porter Robinson MV, or make me believe that the Emperor has clothes.
Can't confirm. No pants.
It makes you, not the character, you the writer, sound irretrievably, jumper cables up the ass, delusional. You want to portray the birthplace of the universe? Effort! Make it glow! Put it on a pedestal! Unknown flying art atop a high spire in a deep earth cavern with Pokemon constellations etched in the wall. I could walk straight through this place and not think anything amiss. Not much reason to yell at the writers here over dialogue. This whole scene is just a bad time for every reason. They should have had it commit backspace. Some bandit nonsense. No interest in living back there with your stupid rules. What? Rules! Example! Please! Other people following the rules! This Origin Ball is completely unnecessary. We yell at each other a bit, go right back to fight the Origin Legendary in a scene that should have come earlier, doesn't present a threat, goes so damn hard, but should have a lot more like it, to fill the whole of the climax instead of just this handful of shots, because these people have more money than God! Why can't the Lake Trio make the red chain self-assemble into the Origin Ball in response to Origin Palkia the second it shows up, and save us this whole ordeal? Kamado cries at the sight of it all. Yes, what a sight to have witnessed. Shame about the player, though. It's a visual medium! Irida, are you here for any reason other than to make me angry? And it remixes the DMP credits theme in a beautiful arrangement, just to guilt me for hating every part of the last hour that wasn't a goth girl. Wonderful! And my face isn't even on the thanks for playing screen. Good game. Wow. Plan for all the contingencies. Hello?
Seek out all Pokemon.
Oh, screw you. Name drop, Volo on plate, do quest, get my ass beat up my mouth, Kamado hasn't changed, Grind Alpha Blissey, Infinite Paper, Darkrai, Shaman. All my homies hit the Manaphy quest, the answer isn't even in the game. Plate, 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 cutting board, plate.
Brains for shit.
Giratina wants to kill God. If that was the plot, why didn't you open with that? And Volo's evil with about 30 seconds of foreshadowing. Volo's responsible for the rift? How? Show me any of it! This game has mentioned a multiverse, so there's no need for a new world to replace this one. Whatever, let's just do this and then we can... That was easy.
So this is what being a loser feels like.
I wanted to make a bit here about it being tough, but this guy's not hard. The game just stops caring about the level curve at Sphere Pillar, which Kamado's second fight should have prepared you for. Pokemon combat just doesn't have enough in it to create accessible depth, so difficulty can only come from my earlier mentioned mathematical enema. No, Volo, I cannot feel the chill. Give me a single particle effect. Say the line as you have the void behind you. Come on! This scene is great, but where's the setup? And yes, subverting the formula to create impact. Synced with music, I love it! If I didn't already know what the Azure Flute was, this would mean nothing. Volo sets himself up to become Dio, which can never happen.
I really want it to happen. There is precedent for immortal characters, and if it doesn't happen, he is just talking out of his ass.
Here's your medal. Second best Pokemon antagonist. I hate you, and I heated it to 500 degrees because I hate you. But we're here. We're finally at the end. We have the plates. We've usurped Giratina. We have the Azure Flute. Let's do this. Finally, Arceus in a Game Freak Games proper story. I've worked so hard, done all your fetch quests, and... What now?
Seek out all Pokemon.
I'm tired of your shit.
Oh wow, look at this gameplay, look at me go, I totally did the thing, I'm so good, I have so much time to waste! The battle is pretty standard for what they're attempting to portray because Pokemon fans have no standards, but beyond that there's no majesty or power to it. I look at this scene, and I don't see a benevolent creator god deigning to congratulate my Herculean efforts. I see a horse with an uncomfortable interest in my personal life. It talks like a 12-year-old affecting Shakespeare, and this whole thing is implied to be a dream, which is a move of unparalleled cowardice. This will be addressed in the world-building chapter. I'll say that fandoms have rioted over more impressive portrayals of their gods, and leave it at that. Plot done.
Hey Ludo, I have no idea if you actually like this game or not.
Oh, thank God you can tell. You could probably hear my cynicism going into this script, so it's been a bit of a time figuring out how I feel about it. I genuinely think that the moment-to-moment stealthing around and manually handling your Pokeballs is fun, challenging, and it encourages you to stay on your toes. It's immersive, and appropriately rewarding to boot. But the cleanup afterwards is bizarrely slow and tedious with major quality of life faults. We have these systems that are on their face brilliant, but just don't exist in a design space to show that off. In the wild, Pokemon are well-produced, believable creatures, with varying degrees of aggression, passivity, and skittishness, with enough ways to interact with them to help them ring true as more than adorable target practice. But once you catch them, they're subservient automata designed to execute instructions. The story is intermittently full of immediately comprehensible conflict, tied to interesting, coherent world building, and character viewpoints founded on that world building, but it's also full of psychotically cheery one-note weirdos who exist to point out the obvious to 8-year-olds behind the screen, and otherwise find people suddenly deciding that they're dicks to make me seem like numero uno Kirito-kun in comparison to their incompetence. And other world-building points that don't seem to exist for any reason but to enable your cheerleaders for the opening 10 minutes before being immediately forgotten. I haven't got a single clue how to talk about this game with any consistency, because to a critical eye aware of the series' history, it's honestly baffling to look at. Simultaneously, everything we've wanted to see in every dimension, and every mistake it's always been making, sitting right next to each other. Higher highs and lower lows than ever before, neither significantly affecting the other. At least the baseline of NPC dialogue has shifted from immersion-breaking sociopathy to being merely boring. Yeah, I'm not convinced of anyone as a real functioning person outside of their archetype, so a step up is a step up, but far be it for me to give praise without the context that it's barely a passing grade. Part 4! What is even happening in this place? Jubilife Village being fearful or ignorant around Pokemon is patently ridiculous, for reasons of 1. Historical accuracy. Ladies and gentlemen, the mystical nerds from the Academy of Reddit, famed for linguistic advances like the word fish, say this is based on late 1800s Japan, with some architectural deviations stemming from Jubilife Village being a pretty recent colony. Why we weren't given a proper time frame is up for debate, but we do have a working date derived by giving GameFreak undeserved benefit of the doubt. Cool. But it sets this story 200 years ago. Humans as a species have had domestication down pat for 10,000 years. Horses and agriculture are the twin foundations of civilization at scale. I refuse to believe that this one colony of randos is so vehemently ignorant of animal husbandry to call the concept of Pokemon labor moronic. I get that everyone's an E for everyone and forced vegan, but come on. The only reason I can see this being decided upon for this city isn't anything that makes sense in universe, but rather because they want the 8-year-old playing to be pandered and treated like a messiah on arrival for doing roughly nothing extraordinary. The fear is also inconsistent with 2. Existing with a past. Early game, Ray says, "Why should this mouse be able to shoot lightning?" Fair question. Counterpoint, how many do you know that don't? If you were from our world, yeah, you'd be having a rational response. But you're not. You were born and raised next to these things, and barring propaganda about the dangers of Pokemon that just kicks the why question back a generation, there's no reason you wouldn't be used to them and find them normal. The honeybees have 3 entire faces, and sapient weather balloons just hanging around at night kidnapping your children. The seals breathe blizzards, the horses are permanently on fire, and they should be used to this stuff. Real humans would have had a handle on these beasties, bare minimum, 1,000 years after we did in our world. At least the normal ones, and if worst comes to worst on the danger babies, it's called a muzzle. But this lady has never seen a bird up close. You literally cannot keep them out. It is a bird. How? It's inconsistent with 3. Existing next to others who are capable of working it without Pokeballs. The Diamond and Pearl clan don't use Pokeballs at all. They're raised together like siblings. Yes, Pokemon marriage lore confirmed. So Jubilife villagers live next to these people, taming Pokemon with few to no problems. It is screamingly obvious that these things are ripe for domestication if the I'm too white to get away with that. Merchants Guild. I'm not Seth, so that's off limits too. Damn it! The Volo Variety Crew would definitely bring news about how the clans handle themselves in here, and that stuff should spread like wildfire because how could it not? The clans are practically flawless in their partnerships. Their Pokemon positive attitude is clearly evidenced by their success in the wilderness, and this universe naturally tends towards people gushing about Pokemon being awesome, the same way an object in motion remains in motion, or an author tends towards the lowest ever status quo. It's just a force of nature. It's also inconsistent because 4. They can't even commit to a bit. Either make them fearful, or make them curious but oblivious to the kinds of Pokemon in this new region. Both can work. Both can work great. But to sell this place as fearing Pokemon, we need more justification that doesn't seem to be present and that probably wouldn't match the brand.
Mind their dedication to the brand is a good chunk of what keeps these games boring. Every time the other media takes a risk, it kicks ass. Wake the hell up, GameFreak. Stakes are a threat and you gotta make people believe you'll pull the trigger.
Rabid curiosity and paralyzing phobia can't coexist as defining traits for all these people. We open the game told about the fear,
but Ray, Celine, and Laventon are the only people who got the memo.
Some optional requests do show a more balanced view of Pokemon, but both fear and curiosity are also baseless. The Pokemon from these people's homelands must be unbelievably boring. They need to be taught about sexual dimorphism, that some of them are poisonous, that some of them have medicinal properties, everything. They're practically unaware of them at points. It's so bizarre. Late game, we hear that Kamato's village was burned down by a Bidoof with a knife. Why aren't we seeing that instead? It sounds like Kamato is ripe for his own arc away from all this BS. Whatever, here's why this is bad. One singular experience is defining his worldview. It's a shallow, meaningless, one-off line to excuse bad behavior. He disregards all of the context of the people who work for him. It does not define the entire village. It's a scorched earth policy on Pokemon relations. It doesn't account for the death of all Pokemon knowledge in the intervening years. It doesn't account for the requests being so Pokemon positive if this is meant to be emblematic of the entire village the way they act like it is. And if this is his defining trait governing the village, but it's not reflected in the people, why is he in charge? Electing corrupt officials this doesn't necessarily represent the will of the people that. This is a story, tell a story that doesn't need a billion excuses. It paints a contradictory picture, and it's irrelevant for 90% of the game because you have the contradiction of fear and curiosity before the backstory. So you fit together the pieces you have as you have them because you don't magically know what the other pieces look like before you have them. I actually need to explain that stories aren't experienced all at once.
What do I do, Lord?
As much as the people have no reason to be the way they are, the actual props and layout of the town are meticulously detailed for gameplay and otherwise. The shops you need are right outside the Galaxy HQ. The Galaxy HQ itself has different rooms for all the different departments, littered with relevant items and workstations. The Diamond and Pearl clan residences are simple but effective enough nomadic tents. It's good. Especially since nobody grabs you by the scruff and scrubs the tables with you to make sure you notice. I did notice, and I appreciated it. And anybody who wouldn't look, wouldn't care if they did see it. Take notes!
Look ball! Look door! Look cloud! Look bird! You're not looking! Bird! 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 Bird!
I will eat your world!
We get a sort of explanation on how Pokeballs work early game. It forces Pokemon to use a latent power to shrink themselves to fit inside and... bruh. Brendan Mulligan, take it away.
When you're explaining yourself or you're explaining something goofy, adults can only ask why once, maybe twice, before they're like, whatever, right? In Star Trek, it's like, oh, the ships go faster than the speed of light. And they're like, how? And you're like, I don't know, there's f***ing crystals. And they're like, great, thank you so much for your time, appreciate it.
This mostly holds true, but typically the throwaway excuse is basic and doesn't immediately beg more questions and necessitate explanation. I have a list of problems with this, but they're boring and there's nothing to say about them because there is no answer. I said it last time, retcon this stuff. The Diamond and Pearl clan conflict is brilliant. Diamond. No! It recognizes what we know about these creatures to create dramatic irony. Resolution is a bit of an oh, we're both right, anticlimax, but I encourage more like this because this is the most Pokemon has ever committed to likable characters and ideological conflict without a big bad bland man stealing the show by gassing every other actor. Something brought up often is this ancient hero who didn't really seem to do anything. Had 9 Pokemon and a naval mine, made their successors into nobles or sacred beings for it, I guess? GameFreak is incredibly reliant on precursor civilizations and ancient lore, which is mostly fine, but it becomes obvious as a crutch in a prequel like this. Alder theories? Based on what? His picture is there? What a reach! Even if it were true, it still doesn't change jack. Y'all just forcing continuity porn for its own sake.
What does it mean?
What do the nobles do? Protect the area from what? Show me that. Give us an example. GameFreak, you foul sloth. Okay. Something that I think ought to be the elephant in the room. Arceus. There's a workable element here. Wants me to shut down Volo and his Giratina plots. Why doesn't Arceus open with that? Why does it open with seek out all Pokemon? To see such truths proven anew, blah blah, bringeth joy to me. But this ties right back into how everyone in Jubilife has no reason to be afraid and the contrivance they're in. Why can't the Pearl Clan satisfy this wish? They see their Pokemon partners as family. There's plenty of examples of Pokemon bonds. There are some places lacking examples that maybe Arceus is taking issue with, but those places are contrived and they have no in-story reason to lack examples. I don't believe for a second that my character is remotely necessary for this story or for Arceus to save itself. These are interventionist gods, which is a very dangerous type of god to have because you have to provide an answer to why they're not able to solve their own problems, or make the story revolve around them like the Iliad. Sometimes their power is waning, sometimes they're dicks, sometimes it's just how conflict happens with these gods. But Arceus and the Creation Trio continually dispense prophecies, iPhones, offers of cooperation, etc. If Arceus can warp me in from wherever, whenever, and banish Giratina in the first place, why would it need me to protect it? I already need to prove my character and earn the trust of these Pokemon to get access to Arceus. And I needed the Arc Phone that it gave me. There are so many lockouts to keep Volo away. The game practically says that Arceus' blessing is required to meet the thing, which ought to go for every creation under its purview, aka everything, Giratina included. Yeah, distinctions between capital G Abrahamic Yahweh and a creator deity in a pantheon. Have a Myriad of Truth lollipop because that's no excuse. Also, what stake does it have in me catching more Pokemon? That's unrelated to bonds with any individual Pokemon, and it turns them from living creatures back into targets. Again, if it's about Jubilife, why was I necessary to teach them something they should have had a good handle on thousands of years ago? And one last note. Arceus refers to the rendition of itself that you get to play with as a part of itself. Whether that part is a one-to-one shadow clone duplicate of the true form you see in this scene, or if the form here is just that one arm is unclear. Given the game's fascination with selling me on intense BS without showing me any part of it, I'm inclined to believe that they are attempting the latter, which is the interpretation I prefer. But you have basic pattern recognition, they forgot to add evidence for the second interpretation. This angle of ancient unknowable gods has its modern cultural roots in the Cthulhu mythos, but it dates back to some descriptions of Judeo-Christian Yahweh, the Aztec Cipactli, and probably others. I'm a gamer wizard, not a time mage. General traits involve formlessness, omnipotence, and warping perception and the world around them to the point of being unrecognizable. Two prominent game portrayals of this are Undertale and its inspiration, Earthbound. Spoilers for Undertale and Earthbound, timestamps on screen. Undertale has examples in primarily Omega or Photoshop Flowey and everybody's first original character Do Not Steal. Omega Flowey gets the focus today because I said so. The world is a blank void when you load into it. It has a physical form, but it's nonsensical in constant motion and rendered wholly differently from anything else in the game. What it did to the world around it is evidence enough that it warps reality and could appear as anything. It conjures nukes with its own face, just to torment you for eternity. It toys with your UI, its TV glitches into a nightmare face. This thing's powers, while it has the human souls, are practically limitless. Earthbound's Gygus? I mean, do I even need to say anything? It's an infinite expanse of evil and dissonant thoughts. Its influence has been seen everywhere through the game in nightmare after nightmare. An alien mind that is only made more intimidating by the fact that it's practically begging for help as it assaults you, fixating on Ness's name. Arceus as portrayed here is by contrast a single discrete entity in a physical space with no display of anything beyond what we are given full opportunity to take in and what the other nobles can do. Something like Beta Arceus' silhouette or eyes strobing briefly before its body descends, or in some way breaking perception around it, adding some force or difficulty for our character to look at this creature. Even just adding an overwhelming light in the background with unknown floating around, a more abstract white void compared to the identifiable starscape can bring these things across. But until the day comes where they convince me otherwise, their portrayal of Arceus is this horse on this one platform in a physically defined space and nothing more. No amount of wishful thinking that it were something greater can change that. Part 5! The game's presentation is mixed. The good is mostly in the way it's presented. Organic camera work that leaves the player in control works to hide flaws and lends presence to the action. Plus, the overall brushstroke heavy art direction is equally present in the action lines of Swords Dance and Aerial Ace, and the watercolor clouds. I like it a lot and think that moving around is a great way to make battles feel realer. I just wish that we had some kind of gameplay reason to move around. Maybe keeping yourself out of harm's way while still within range to give orders, grabbing items in the middle of a gym battle to make it seem more active, giving orders while you manipulate a shoddy criminal underground environment to crash a light fixture on your opponents. Come on, infinite possibilities. As much as the art direction warrants praise, technically the game does look pretty mocap animations in a mid-tier GameCube title. Take the scene where you're getting kicked out of town at the emotional darkest hour of the story, and compare it to any random cutscene in Xenoblade. Why do I need to trade the grid items to Zissou to upgrade them? We have a crafting system and we have it for a reason. The reason is that 5 years ago everybody thought Minecraft made all the money, but if we have this system, why aren't we using it? The requests are nice. They've got decent character, decent references, a few good gags, and the people are, at strangest, comprehensibly quirky. No more NPCs from space a hair trigger away from homicide, they're just dumb. The Pokeballs brainwashed Pokemon half conspiracy I've been peddling is, by some miracle, at its weakest here. The Pearl Clan have no reason to see Pokeballs as anything but what they are, because there is no hypocrisy for any hypothetical PETA antics like how Team Plasma uses Pokeballs. You know, if I were referring to the parallel universe PETA that didn't see death as preferable to adoption. Anyways, the Pearl Clan actually has an amount of authority to say that I'm friends. For once. It's not enough, and their arguments are only addressed with violence, but it is something. What the hell is this water shader doing? This is surreal. The production value in this game is ridiculously spotty. The textures are stretched to hell and back. The terrain is ridiculous. All of Snowpoint Temple has floor collision 3 inches above the actual mesh, so everybody's floating. The lighting... There's something wrong with her face. Between that, we get some genuinely impressive scenes of the nobles wilding out, mocapped animations, etc. It's nothing that hasn't been done on Wii, because this game is just Spectrob's Origins with bonus shaders, but GameFreak has officially entered the fantastic future year of 2009. Also, animation culling. It's something that a lot of games do, especially on Switch because it's a less powerful system. This woman is 20 feet away in a cutscene. Xenoblade is on the same console. For what people call a tech demo, this is embarrassing, but it's more than a tech demo. A tech demo wouldn't have this kind of game loop, and the polish wouldn't be limited to these sporadic scraps. Closing thoughts... I'm getting vertigo from the blend of good and bad here. Core loop is flat out addictive when you're in it, but it counts on you to fix it up now and again. Some characters are prominent world figures, taking actions and holding perspectives with weight and charisma. But also Ray is here. Pokemon feel like they exist in a world, finally, but it doesn't seem to have been this one for very long, because nobody has even the slightest handle on them yet. And once you get a handle on them, well, there's nothing left but the handle and an empty skull. Everyone outside of the clan heads are irrelevant, transient stereotypes. The plot is scarce to non-existent through the majority of the runtime. There is no major threat or proof that your actions affect the world outside of other characters say so for the entire main plot. If you want the best Pokemon game, here it is. No question. The gameplay takes less than 6 times as long as it needs to. Said gameplay exists beyond rock, paper, scissors with extra steps. What characters matter here actually caught a laugh or two out of me, and I was interested in the mystery of how this place affects Sinnoh's myths. And yes, I let my lower brain function take over when the Spear Pillar music played. My blood is gasoline and it's GameFreak's to ignite. If you want an affecting RPG, skip it. The monsters are one-note statues once you catch them. The stealth is rendered irrelevant by wide-open level design and monster aggression. The plot barely exists as a thread to string together mediocre at best boss fights. It's presented organically, but it's wrecked by technical incompetence and unreleasable shaders. Like, that's Alan Smithy levels of we weren't done. The game transparently apes modern trends without understanding their use cases, a trait shared by many games, but I digress. 90% of all important events occur off-screen, and it portrays the pinnacle of its universe and the reward for your 100% completion dedication with all the majesty of me microwaving leftovers at 3 AM. I give this game itself out of Palworld. An indeterminate ranking that absolutely puts Palworld on top, but how the fractions work out is for time to tell. I think that the way Pokemon are treated after capture is a pretty direct adaptation of its inspiration. Satoshi was inspired by catching bugs. He wanted to collect them all. It was all over the branding, all over the games. But what do you do with a bug once you catch it? Bond with it? Exchange affections? Have an interplay with its personality? Not really. Bugs are display pets. Feed them and shut the cage until it's time to feed them again so you can have them on a wall. I don't think that's how anybody wants to see or relate to the Pokemon they catch, and I think Pokeballs only encourage and perpetuate the way these games treat them. Creatures to be put away and made irrelevant whenever they're not immediately useful. Yes, Pokemon are cuter and more expressive than insects, which helps relatability, but it's not about the creatures themselves. Those are always great. It doesn't change the fact that they're treated like display pieces instead of characters. See past nostalgia, see past the hollow smiles, and realize that there's nothing there to grab onto that you're not projecting into it. And that gulf between what we have and what we want only gets wider when we see how obvious it all is to the characters living with them. Pokemon is officially a neglected child. Kept in a basement, fed half-composted scraps, and only allowed to leave home in a full body harness and shock collar. Back around Gen 4, it had some cool uncles who'd take it out for ice cream and culture to nurture its incredible potential. But when Mama Game Freak saw that, she got afraid her baby would be tainted by worldly influences and kept an eye on their activities for a few years before cutting off contact. Legends Arceus is just what happens when Mama Game Freak sees her rich friends, how their kids are acting, and demands Pokemon act like the other respectable children without changing previous demands. He tries his damnedest, and he's tied his tie well, but there's something unassailably wrong about the stolen jacket, the patchwork colors, and the dead, static creations glistening behind his eyes as he brings Mother a third plate of canapes. And here are all the critics applauding his dress sense as he cusses and cries in front of everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, this stuff is an insult to your dedication to the game and your loyalty to the franchise. We should expect more out of this studio than Bob on Battlefield cutscenes. This is God! Come on! I've been told I have high standards. I don't think that's correct. I'd be satisfied with the basics if I got them. That's part of why I wanted to talk about Mega Man Star Force. But Game Freak's failure to meet them after making such a big stink about revitalizing and renewing the series is ridiculous.
Because if this is meant to be an evolution, then why do the games have the exact same ending?
I hope to see this formula return soon. And I hope they start the game structure from a plot outline this time. So until I see you next, everybody just remember that play is sacred, play is magic.
Special thanks goes out to Nikki. Thanks for the Animal Crossing footage on such short notice.
I'm not playing Scarlet and Violet, they can eat my pants. Some features look good, but I'm not going to praise them for it until they make it to Gen 10. I've got Palworld to look forward to. I've got Undertale to talk about. I'm not playing Scarlet and Violet. What was Ingo doing here? If I'm here for Arceus, what the hell is he here for?